I need to talk about this parliamentary performance this afternoon. So brazenly devoid of fact or finesse that it would make even, I don't know who it would be, George Santos or someone blush. It's Kemi Badenoch's latest foray into fiction, her phantom deal with British Steel. Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, I don't know what she's trying to do. It's a sort of tragicomic rehearsal for something, maybe for the next leader of the opposition, maybe for the next Conservative leader. She declared with remarkable confidence that last year, as business secretary, she had negotiated a modernisation plan with British Steel. The plan, we were told, would limit job losses, keep the Scunthorpe plant running and install electric arc furnaces like the successful deal struck at Port Talbot. But there was one problem. The deal didn't exist, not metaphorically, not partially, not in draft. It simply didn't exist, as the business secretary pointed out. And this wasn't just a technical misunderstanding. This was not civil service red tape. It was a complete fabrication, one that collapsed the moment that Jonathan Reynolds did what so few front benchers dare to. He asked for evidence. In other words, he said that she was a liar. How much money did you agree with Jingye? What were the terms? Where are the documents, the costings, the minutes? And Badenoch's response, a flurry of indignation, followed by the flattest climb down since Liz Truss tried to convince the country that £45 billion of unfunded tax cuts were sound economics. She was forced to admit under pressure that no deal had been completed. In fact, there was no financial offer at all. Nothing was agreed with Jingye, the Chinese company that now owns British Steel, thanks, ironically, to Boris Johnson's government. And yet, she had the gall to post on social media that a plan had been negotiated. Past tense. Done and dusted. Like she'd emerged from the boardroom with hard hats and handshakes. It was, in every sense, in every meaningful sense, a lie, and she has been caught out. And it gets worse, because when challenged, she attempted to reframe the whole thing. Now it wasn't a deal, it was negotiations. Ongoing, hypothetical. We hadn't got to the figures yet, she claimed. What? What sort of negotiation takes place with no figures? What business leader agrees to shut a major plant and move operations to a new site without being told how much money is on offer? Is this how Badenoch thinks government works, on vibes and vague gestures? Even she claimed that the only reason her fantasy deal didn't go through was because of the snap election. Apparently it was the electoral timetable, not say the complete absence of paperwork, that prevented her heroic intervention. And at this point, Jonathan Reynolds, clearly flabbergasted, pointed out the obvious. If your deal had existed, we'd have inherited it. The Treasury could have costed it. Civil servants would have recorded it. You can't run a major industrial negotiation like it's a school bake sale. And he concluded rightly that there was nothing to inherit because there was nothing agreed. And Badenoch's inability to provide a single figure, even a ballpark, proved that. Now pause for a moment to appreciate the sheer idiocy of the part of the leader of the opposition. This wasn't a misstep. It was a deliberate political ploy to suggest competence where there was none. To pretend that Labour is nationalising steel, that the Conservatives had a sleek... So while Labour is nationalising steel, the Conservatives had a sleek, modern plan all along that Labour rejected. But the plan was as real as Boris Johnson's... as Boris Johnson's clean sofa. It's worth noting the irony that Badenoch, often the loudest voice denouncing the civil service for obstruction, now wants us to believe that absolutely nothing was written down during her supposed negotiations. That's not how Whitehall works. That's not how WhatsApp works. And this is the danger. Badenoch isn't a backbencher lobbing grenades. She is touted, alarmingly by some on the Tory right, as the next great hope, a future Prime Minister, the successor to Sunak, which is deeply concerning, given that she's already displaying the rhetorical dishonesty of Boris, the fiscal delusion of Truss, the administrative fecklessness of, well, herself. Her handling of the steel shows that she's unfit not just for leadership, but for the opposition. At a moment when thousands of jobs in Scunthorpe hang in the balance, she chose to inflate her CV rather than tell the truth. It's not as if she's pretending to be Rachel Reeves. She's pretending to be, Thatcher. And when caught, she doubled down, then folded. Even Reform UK, normally starved of relevance, are gaining voters disillusioned with this sort of idiocy. Badenoch wants to woo them. She's doing the opposite. She's driving the Tory base into the arms of Farage faster than a barmaid at a pub quiz. Steel is not just a symbol of British industry, it is a strategic asset, essential to defence, essential to infrastructure, to green transition, and to lie about saving it for political gain is not only cynical, it's reckless, and wholly reckless. The whole farce can be summed up as follows. There was no deal. There was no deal. She said there was a deal. There was no deal. She said there were negotiations. There was no deal. There were no figures. She said Labour bungled the deal. There was no deal. There was nothing to bungle. Kemi Badenoch has once again shown that in the theatre of politics, she's mastered the art of bluster without bothering to do any homework. This is idiocy, but it's also laziness and deceit. She is not fit to continue in this job.